expression is familiarity breeds contempt, which basically means you get used to something, you stop appreciating it. Even worse, contempt means something far more negative. But in this case, it's just we get used to things. We've been doing a seder now for 3,000 years, over and over again. I mean, the Haggadah itself is a cumulative. It was written much later on. I mean, we have the Torah mitzvahs itself, to tell over this, Sipur Yitzis Mitzrayim, to talk about the mitzvahs. We have matzah more. These go back to Torah itself. But the actual seder experience kind of evolved over time, and it has become what it's become. And now, basically, for the most part, it's one of the most done Jewish experiences across the spectrum. Orthodox, conservative, Reform, everyone has some form of seder. I was actually looking online. I'm actually checking my own books actually, but when they bring up your books or whatever you're ordering, there's a whole list below of all the different types of possibilities, or they connect it all up. It's it's all part of the marketing and advertising of Amazon. And one particular store caught my eye. It was very small, so I really couldn't catch up much of my eye, but enough of it that I actually clicked on it to see what it was, and it was 5 or 6 different versions of the Haggadah. The first one was the Reform version of the Haggadah. The second one was the quick version of the Haggadah. The third was all these different. You want a fast seder? Here's how to do it. Everyone's doing it. There's always everyone's involved in some level, some way doing it. For some it's just a family experience. To get together, do something together. Some of these have more or less Jewish content. So everyone's used to it. It's part of our culture. It's part of who we are. More than Rosh Hashanah, more than Yom Kippur, more than Sukkot, more than Shavuos. Pesach somehow survived the test of time. Even if people don't actually get rid of all their hummus and eat matzah, nevertheless, the Pesach, the concept, Passover, is part of the world's mentality to a large. There's a huge market. There's a lot of, the non-Jewish world picked up very early and realized it's a huge financial market to get to, because Jews need food and they enjoy eating it, and you can get that hextra on it, then you can sell it and make millions and millions of dollars just off Pesach alone. Unfortunately, that leaves us blind to the opportunity. That leaves us in the dark about what we're supposed to be accomplishing, really. What it is that it's supposed to, the impact it's supposed to have on us. So, for example, if you ask anybody, why do we eat matzah? They'll say the only mitzvah itself is Leil Seder. The rest of the Pesach, you don't have to have matzah. You can't have chumetz, but you don't have to have matzah. You can get chumetz free the rest, matzah free. Sorry, matzah free the rest of what did I say? Chumetz or matzah? Sorry. Scratch that, reverse that. Rewind that, right? Leil Seder, there's a mitzvah to have matzah. Okay? The rest of the week, you don't have to. You can be matzah free the rest of the week if you want to be, right? Just the first night. And if you ask somebody why it is that we're so makpid, why we have to have matzah specifically on the Seder, it's one thing not to have chumetz, but why do we have to eat matzah specifically? You don't have to go very far. Just open the Chumash. The Chumash tells you, Parshas Bo, right? There was not enough time to bake bread. So therefore, we got matzahs instead. And to commemorate that, we eat the matzah. They'll say it to remind ourselves of what was going on over 3,300 some odd years ago. But anybody who's... you've watched matzah being baked? Have you ever baked matzah yourself? Right? But you watched it? You can go online. On YouTube, there's tons of videos of people baking matzahs. The problem is never not having enough time to bake bread. It's one of the most frantic operations you can possibly imagine. People running around back and forth, doing their jobs very quickly, calling out commands and all that. Because if you leave flour and water mixed together for 18 minutes, that's where you get 18-minute matzahs from, 18 minutes. Don't do anything. Just let it sit there for 18 minutes. That's all. Just forget about it for 18 minutes. You know how fast 18 minutes goes, time-wise? You put something down for a second to go do something else, and before you know it, 20 minutes have passed. Nobody, in 3 million Jews that left Mitzrayim, nobody had 18 minutes to bake bread? They didn't forget about it for 18 minutes, and they got chumetz in the end? The amazing thing is not that we have matzah, or that we don't have chumetz. The amazing thing is how we ended up with matzah. It's almost impossible. to have a situation where nobody had Chumash, Leil Seder, back at the time in Mitzrayim. There was tons of time. And the next question is, okay, so let's say, theoretically, there wasn't enough time. You're getting everyone together, packing up the bags, the elderly, the young, the children, women, everyone's busy. And they can't, they put over their shoulders and it bakes in the sun very quickly, right? Let's say there wasn't enough time. But why? Why wasn't there enough time? Why was there not enough time to bake bread in Mitzrayim? What answer do you usually hear? Why wasn't there enough time?
We really didn't believe we were leaving?
Probably we weren't. Probably didn't. But that wasn't the reason. That's classically given. It's probably true. But nonetheless, it was pretty self-evident at that point in time. I mean, Paro was kicking us out.
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptians.
Possessions from the Egyptians.
Pardon me?
We were taking the possessions from the Egyptians.
That's why they didn't have time.
Yeah.
That's true. That could be a reason why. It wouldn't be the first time that materialism got in the way of a spiritual goal. But what's the reason that people give why the Jewish people had to leave Mitzrayim so quickly?
We reached a low level, we stayed longer.
Yeah, right. We were told the Jewish people were holding on Mem Tesh Shari Tuma, the 49th level of spiritual impurity. There's only 50 levels of spiritual impurity. There's 50 levels of Kedusha, of holiness, right? That you're supposed to climb, get close to God. And there's 50, some say only 49, levels of spiritual impurity. You know what it looks like to be on the 49th level of spiritual impurity? I don't know what you have in Modi'in over here, but in Yerushalayim you have Ben Yehuda Street, for example. You're all familiar with Ben Yehuda Street, right? If you were to walk up to someone sitting at a cafe, a secular Jew, sitting at a cafe having coffee and a croissant or something, and tell them that we need this, in 2 weeks' time, to find the Korban Pesach and shecht it and eat it at the Seder, what is he going to tell you? How are you going to look in his eyes, or her eyes for that matter? Are you crazy? Who does it today? I mean, it's just a myth. They're not going to say believe in it. And yet, they're not holding a Mem Tesh Shari Tuma. I don't even know who today has reached such a low level, but one thing we know for sure, that anybody who gets the 50th level, irredeemable. You can't fix it. So the Jewish people were told, because they were Mitzrayim for so long, 209 years altogether at that point in time, 116 years of slavery, because of that, we were so affected by the Egyptian exile, we were so affected by the environment that we'd sunken down to such a low level, even though we're being enslaved by these people, right? Somehow we were spiritually corrupted to such a degree that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not free us when he did, there'd be nothing to free. We would still be alive, we're still walking around, but we'd be more Egyptian than Jewish in any way. That's what would have happened. So therefore, we had to rush out. We had to leave quickly to avoid that situation from happening. Does that sound familiar, though? You heard that before? That's what we're told. That's the classic answer. You walk into someone, a little, a cheder child who's, this question, that's the answer he's going to give you. Go to someone, Yeshiva Katana, ask that question, that's the answer they're going to give you. Go to someone in Yeshiva Gedola and ask that question, that's the answer they're going to give you. And the most amazing thing is it's not true. For thousands of years, we've been saying this, but it's not true. And if you don't believe me, open the Chumash. Read the Chumash. Look in Parshas Bo. At the end of the 10 plagues, who's up and who's down? We got the Egyptians and the Jewish people, or Bnei Yaakov, at least, not quite officially Jewish yet, to Mount Sinai, right? You got the Egyptians and the Jewish people. Who's up and who's down? Tell me. The Jews are up. How did we leave Mitzrayim? The pasuk says in Parshat B'Shalach, we left B'Yad Rama. I mean, with exalted hand, like we were up. We were the ones in control. Where's Paro? Right? Kids even have a song about this. It's the most, Paro pajamas be'ems halayla. It's like they sing this, right? How many enemies do we have a song like that about? Why? Why is he in his pajamas? He forgot to get dressed? He's a king. Kings don't do things like that. Why is it? What's going on? It's the middle of the night. He's worried about the death. He lost a son. He's worried about his own life because he's also a Bechor. He's also a firstborn. He sees what's going on, and he's looking all over the place. He didn't even take the time to get dressed into his royal clothing and go out with an entourage to find Moshe and Aaron to beg for his life. That sounds like the forces of evil are up. The Egyptians are telling Paro, come on, enough is enough already. Get rid of these people. Kick them out already. Look what's going on. Kulana Metim, we're all dead people over here. Mitzrayim has been destroyed because of their God. And they're up? No, they're down. It's like a seesaw, that when evil is up, then good is down. When good is up, evil is down. You can't have them both up at the same time. They can't both be down at the same time as well. So the very fact that the Egyptian people were so desperate to get rid of Klal Yisrael, to kick them out, to throw them out of the country, to save their own lives, means that evil was at the point of destruction. Literally, at the point of destruction. The Jewish people, on the other hand, they were free and clear of the Mem Tev Tuma, completely out of it. So what about this statement, this idea, this comment that's been passed down for thousands of years? You're right. It did happen that way. There was a point when we were holding on Mem Tev Tuma and in danger of destruction and oblivion. There was a point, but that's not now. That was before the first plague, Makas Dam. That was the first. Before then, if God hadn't begun, because it says in Parshas Lech Lecha, right, that the Jewish people were supposed to be in Egypt, or land not theirs, for 400 years. We left after 210, so 190 years early. So if God had not ended the exile when he did, had we stayed the full 400 years, nothing would have survived, nothing would have remained. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu God stepped in and brought the plagues at that time, 190 years early, 91, began, in order to make sure the Jewish people survived, because he promised Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that somebody would go back to Eretz Canaan after all this was all said and done. That's when it was true, before the first plague. But as the plagues proceeded, as they kept coming one after the other, each plague was like medicine for the Jewish people. Each plague yanked the Jewish people out of the Mem Tev Tumah a little bit more. So by the 10th plague, when Hashem himself did it, Ani v'lo malach, ani lo saraf, I myself did it. The Gilui, the revelation of Hashem in the 10th plague was so intense that the Jewish people were well out of Mem Tev Tumah. So now the question comes back again. So why did we leave early? Why did we leave so quickly? It seems like from the facts on the ground that we could easily have stayed years after that and never be in danger again. We were in control. We were the ones who were up, not the Egyptians. So in that case, we had all the time in the world to bake bread, all the time in the world to not have matzah. Just think how much chametz you wouldn't have had to clean if we had simply taken advantage, right? Pouring would not be a nightmare, where kids run around the house with vaffling, 30 days in advance of Pesach. Hiding them all kinds of places, you only find them in the middle of Pesach, not before, and despite all the badikas, who puts a holiday like that in advance of Pesach? It's like literally the antithesis, right? Just to make sure there's enough chametz to find in your house, we'll give you a holiday that spreads it all over the place. But we had that matzah. So it turns out that the matzah that seems to be incidental, just like something that we do to commemorate the holiday, turns out that it was the starting point of the entire discussion. In fact, Avram Avinu, the Medrash says, he ate matzah on the 15th of Nisan hundreds of years before the Jewish people went out.